From childhood, Kristin Johnson, like many other girls, dreamed of becoming a princess, beautiful, wealthy, and famous, living a long and happy life, as if in a fairy tale. She grew up in a loving family, had a carefree childhood, and ambitious plans for the future. Kristin aspired to achieve fame, and her dream came true, but not due to her outstanding talents, but because of the horrific cruelty of her murderer. Kristin was born in 1981 in Santa Clara, California, to the family of Teresa and Kirk Johnson. As a very young girl, she moved with her parents to the small town of Saugatuck in Michigan. It was a quiet and picturesque settlement with a population of less than 1,000 people. Saugatuck seemed like the perfect place for a happy and safe life. The crime rate here was very low, and the locals didn't even lock their doors, unafraid of criminals. A special feature of the community was that everyone knew each other. Kristin had an older brother, Derek, who was a few years older than her. Their family seemed close-knit and happy, but the idyll was shattered when the parents decided to divorce. Despite this, they maintained a good relationship for the sake of the children. Kristin and Derek took turns living with their father and mother, as required by the custody plan. Due to these circumstances, the girl became involved in household chores early on and started helping her mother at the age of 12, including with the family budget. Kristin tried to find any job to be independent and not ask her parents for money. Later, Derek went to serve in the army and then decided to become a professional soldier. Meanwhile, Kristin was studying in high school. Having become independent, she took her life completely into her own hands. The girl was helped in this by her intelligence and natural beauty. Moreover, she was cheerful, fun, and an interesting conversationalist. Kristin looked great, particularly thanks to an active and healthy lifestyle. Her loved ones admired her beauty and advised her to conquer Hollywood. Kristin enjoyed sailing, surfing, and everything related to water the most. She engaged in these sports when she came to California to visit her grandmother. But after returning to Michigan, the girl always missed her favorite activities and needed time to readjust. In Saugatuck, Kristin became passionate about theater and became a member of a small acting club. In the winter, she worked part-time as a waitress at a local cafe and turned out to be a real find for the owner of the establishment, as she was very sweet, polite, and sociable, which attracted more visitors. During this period, Kristin increasingly thought about leaving their small town. The calm atmosphere of the province was not for her. The girl felt that she deserved more and aspired to a different life than serving food in a cafe. She realized that there were no serious prospects for her in Saugatuck. After graduating from high school in 1999, Kristin finally got enough freedom to start building her own life and pursuing success. After considering the situation, she decided to go in search of herself. The girl traveled to different cities, worked there, and tried herself in various fields. Eventually, in 2000, she chose California, which she loved so much, to live in. The climate was wonderful there, and there were many more opportunities to realize her potential. Initially, Kristin moved in with her grandmother in the small resort town of Santa Maria, with a population of 100,000 people. But despite the proximity to her favorite entertainment, she first focused on important things. First of all, the girl started looking for a job to support herself, as this was very important to her. Kristin got a job as a system administrator in the city's electric power company. Then she took care of her education and decided to enter the University of California. The educational institution was quite far away. The road from her grandmother's house took 40 minutes. Kristin enrolled there and purchased a car with the money she had earned earlier, but even with a car, such a commute took a lot of time. Therefore, the girl began looking for a job closer to the university. That's how she first touched upon her dream, Hollywood. Kristin managed to get a part-time job in a film crew that was planning to shoot a movie. The experience of performing in a theater group helped her adapt to the new work environment. As a result, the girl was hired as an assistant on the set of a thriller. There she met people who lived and breathed Hollywood. For a girl from the provinces, this was a real star chance. Kristin communicated with extremely famous actors and directors and was incredibly happy. She simply could not believe that she was interacting with celebrities. The world of cinema completely captivated her. This work inspired young Kristin so much that she wanted to be closer to this field. The girl enrolled in professional makeup courses taught by Hollywood makeup artists. Having mastered these skills, she thought about becoming a makeup artist on a film set. For this, Kristin decided to move to the city of her dreams, Los Angeles. Despite the fact that this journey was quite risky, Kristin's curiosity outweighed her fear of the unknown, and she was irresistibly drawn to Hollywood. Eventually, she moved to Los Angeles, where several famous film studios are located at once. For a young beauty, it was a real period of temptation, but she demonstrated the highest standards of decency that a young girl is capable of. Kristin did not lead a dissolute life, although it was popular in the environment where she found herself. She avoided loud parties and get-togethers, remaining a rather modest person. Kristin had a boyfriend named Todd, whom she had met a couple of years ago. Despite the distance, they continued to communicate. Later, Todd moved in with her, and in 2002 they decided to rent an apartment together in Los Angeles. For both young people who did not yet have financial stability, this was a beneficial decision. Their life together was not an easy adventure, but Kristin did not despair and began looking for a new permanent job. However, difficulties arose with this. The girl managed to find only various part-time jobs, and there was no serious work. Her boyfriend earned most of their joint budget. Meanwhile, the relationship between Kristin and Todd was getting worse and worse. Later, the girl complained to her mother that verbal altercations with her boyfriend were increasingly turning into physical violence. She found herself trapped in a toxic relationship, complicated by financial problems. Kristin's mother began looking for new housing for her daughter so that she could move out from Todd. Eventually, the girl ran away from her boyfriend and settled in a small apartment. She continued her studies remotely. During this period, Kristin's father provided her with significant financial support. He hoped that his daughter would finally find her place in life and calling, so he wanted to help her. By November 2002, Kristin finally got a job at a mobile communications company, but this position was far from her ideals. Neither the field of activity nor the level of income met her expectations. In addition, the girl still could not find acceptable housing near work. Her mother found a cozy house in the town of Santa Monica, neighboring Los Angeles, which Kristin had to share with two other girls. However, the house was located near the beach, and in a prestigious area at that. It was the perfect place to get on her feet, so Kristin moved there. During this period, she also transferred to the University of Santa Monica. Kristin's dreams of Hollywood did not come true. She failed to start a career, and her relationship with Todd fell apart. The girl actually started her life from scratch. However, she did not despair and continued to pursue her dream. On February 15, 2003, Kristin was going to a party. Before that, the young beauty went to the mall. She talked for a long time with her mother on the phone, discussing plans for the future. This was the last call to loved ones that Kristin made. The next day, on Sunday, February 16, 2003, the mother was waiting for a call from her daughter to tell her about the previous day. But the girl did not get in touch. The woman tried to call her herself, but the phone was unavailable. At first, this did not cause much concern, because the daughter could be resting or be at work and not hear the call. However, the next day, Kristin still did not contact her family. Around 9 a.m., the mother called her daughter's work. Kristin was always available and answered calls. But this time, the woman only heard the answering machine. Then the mother called Kristin's manager, who informed her that the girl had not shown up for work. He also stressed that Kristin was a very reliable employee. For the last 3 months, she had not been late or absent. Therefore, her absence surprised everyone. However, her colleagues also could not reach her. According to the manager, the employee was last seen on February 14. One of her friends at work said that the girl was going to some party. The mother of the missing girl went to her daughter's page on social networks but did not find any useful information about the party there. The girl had not posted a single photo. Although previously she actively maintained her page, actually documenting every step of her life. The woman also checked the transactions on her daughter's bank accounts, but from the moment she stopped communicating, no transactions were made. The mother called all the hospitals, but Kristin was not registered anywhere. After that, on February 17, she decided to contact the police department of Santa Monica and reported the disappearance of her 21-year-old daughter. Investigators checked whether a similar girl had been involved in road accidents on those days but found nothing. The neighbors of the young beauty also heard nothing about her after the disappearance. The police contacted Kristin's ex-boyfriend Todd, with whom she had a rather turbulent and sometimes violent relationship. A version was considered that he could have tracked down his beloved who had run away from him and done something to her. But Todd denied seeing Kristin. The girl's neighbors provided only general information that they saw her on Saturday, February 15, when she was going to a party, but they did not know with whom she was going and where exactly. Kristin's colleagues had previously told this to her mother. This was the first lead in the case, and the investigators began to check this information. Later, a new detective joined the case. As soon as he opened the collected materials, the photo of the missing girl struck him. The crime victim strongly resembled another girl who had disappeared earlier and was found dead in 1995. That girl was a novice model who was invited by a photographer for a photo shoot for a glossy magazine, but this photo shoot never took place. The victim's name was Linda Sobek, and her killer was a photographer named Charles Rathbone. He lured the beautiful blonde out of the city by deception, where he killed her. But the police officer also knew that Linda's killer was already behind bars at that time and physically could not be involved in this case. However, it could be a copycat of Charles, who was inspired by his ingenuity and acted according to his scheme. Detectives needed to obtain at least some information related to the missing girl, so they put out an all-points bulletin for her car, a white Mazda Mint. At the same time, investigators, communicating with Kristin's mother, learned more details about the girl's ex-boyfriend Todd, as well as about her new boyfriend named Lucas. However, the mother knew very little about the latter. She did not even remember his last name, which complicated the search. More than 48 hours had passed since Kristin's disappearance, and this is a critical period for the search for missing persons. The police seriously considered the version that the girl might no longer be alive. They began to study the billing data of Kristin's mobile phone. It turned out that the last outgoing call from her phone was made at 5:34 p.m. on February 15. She called the Directory Assistance Service at the number 411, which could indicate that the girl was in trouble and was trying to clarify an address or phone number. The conversation lasted about 3 minutes, and therefore, this communication could be of great importance for the investigation, but it was impossible to find out the exact content of the conversation, since such calls are not recorded. After this conversation, Kristin's cell phone went dead, and its location was last recorded in the area of Ventura Boulevard. After that, the police contacted the media to involve them in the search for the girl. Messages about Kristin's disappearance with a hint of similarity to Linda's murder immediately appeared in the news headlines. Investigators searched the apartment where Kristin lived, looking for possible leads. They found a receipt from a women's lingerie store, dated February 15, the day the girl disappeared. The police also found out that Kristin continued to communicate with her ex-boyfriend, despite his aggressive behavior. Sometimes she visited him, with the last such visit taking place on February 7. However, the detectives found the first truly serious lead while studying the data from the missing girl's email. On February 13, Kristin sent a message to the coordinator who was organizing the party. In the letter, she noted that she was looking forward to the celebration and was planning to buy a ticket. She was told that all tickets were sold out but was put on a special waiting list. This is a common practice when organizers of such events with celebrities seek to attract visitors and offer them to buy VIP tickets at an inflated price. The police managed to find Kristin's new boyfriend Lucas and talk to him. He said that he last saw the girl on February 14th, the day before her disappearance. They spent the evening together watching a movie and then said goodbye. The young man successfully passed a polygraph test and had an alibi, so he did not arouse any suspicion among the investigators. After that, the detectives talked with Kristin's ex-boyfriend Todd, but he also had an alibi. It turned out that the guy was out of town, which was confirmed by several people. Of all the versions of law enforcement, the party that Kristin was going to and after which she disappeared was of the greatest interest. They believed that the key to unraveling her disappearance lay here. Investigators contacted the event organizers and were shocked. It turned out that Kristin had not bought a ticket and had not shown up at this party. But where could she have gone then? To reconstruct the chronology of events on that fateful evening, the police checked the transactions made with the missing girl's bank card. Thanks to this, law enforcement officers found out and checked all the stores that Kristin visited that day. They reviewed footage from surveillance cameras in search of any extraordinary events or clues. This check took a lot of time. While the police were analyzing the collected information, they received an alarming call. A woman named Susan Murphy reported a suspicious man. She told a short story of meeting a certain Victor Thomas in a store, who introduced himself as an employee of a film company conducting a casting for a new James Bond movie. He pressured her, invited her to the role of a Bond girl, admired her beauty, and urged her to participate in the casting. Susan found this man suspicious, and at the last moment, she managed to refuse. For insurance, Susan's husband, a former police officer, went to meet with Victor. He personally talked with this man and tried to find out his intentions. However, Victor ran away without providing any valuable information. Susan checked everything she knew about him and found out that he was lying. Victor Thomas had nothing to do with the film industry, such a person did not exist at all. The man probably made up this legend, as the killer of Linda Sobek had done at the time. In this way, he tried to meet a beautiful girl, but for what purpose remained unknown. Despite the fact that Susan's story ended well, Victor was still at large and could continue his criminal activities. That is why the received information had to be immediately checked and the suspect had to be found, because he could have some leads in the case of Kristin's disappearance. Investigators carefully studied all the stores that the girl visited on the day of her disappearance, viewed footage from surveillance cameras, but did not find anything interesting. Then they decided to personally visit the stores and talk to the staff. During the conversation with the salespeople, the police provided a description of Victor, who was hitting on pretty girls. In one of the stores, a saleswoman reported that she had seen a similar man, but could not provide any more useful details. An artist arrived at the scene to create a portrait of the suspect. While the search for Kristin continued, law enforcement officers sent dogs and volunteers to the area where the girl last contacted and called the directory service. At this time, patrols and volunteers were looking for the car and the missing person herself. The police received many reports that a similar car had been seen somewhere, but all these testimonies turned out to be false. On February 24th, an important call finally came to law enforcement. Kristin's car, a white Mazda Mint, was found in a parking lot located near the shopping center where she was shopping. A forensic expert arrived at the scene, conducted a thorough examination, collected fingerprints, and all possible evidence. In the back seat of the cabin was a bottle of water, and in the front seat was the missing girl's cell phone. However, a real surprise awaited the investigators when they talked to the parking lot guard. The man recalled that there was a small incident with this car. The car arrived at the site at 5:45 p.m., but the parking space was reserved for another client. A man got out of the car and, upon learning about this, reacted aggressively to the guard's warning. He simply threw the car keys at him and left without any explanation. There was no one in the car. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras in the parking lot, so it was not possible to see the driver at that moment. There were no leads. Then the detectives returned to analyzing the girl's purchases on the day of the disappearance and were shocked. Kristin had bought a set of clothes that exactly matched the description given by Susan. When Victor invited her to the casting, he asked Susan to buy the shortest possible black miniskirt, a white blouse, stockings, and shoes. All these things were paid for with Kristin's bank card. The police did not believe that this was a mere coincidence, which meant that the girl could have fallen into the trap of a swindler who probably had other unknown victims on his conscience. Almost the same way as Susan, but fortunately, she was accompanied by her husband. However, there was no information about Victor, and the investigators did not know how to track him down. Law enforcement officers again turned to the girls with whom the missing person lived. They recalled that Kristin was indeed going to some casting but did not remember the details. During the conversation, they remembered that it was definitely related to James Bond. The girls said that Kristin was very excited about this event, and the description of her outfit in which she left the house, a blouse and a miniskirt, completely coincided with the officers' concerns. Kristin was afraid of being late for the audition scheduled for 5:30 p.m. and was wearing the same revealing outfit that the offender had asked Susan and probably Kristin to wear. Detectives continued to review footage from surveillance cameras over and over again to find Victor, and eventually, they managed to spot him in the store where employees had mentioned him. But the quality of the video was so poor that it was impossible to make out his facial features. However, this was at least some lead. Based on the testimony of eyewitnesses, investigators could recreate an approximate description of the criminal. By February 26, a composite sketch of the main suspect in the disappearance of the young beauty was compiled. One of the experienced detectives, having familiarized himself with the case materials, recognized Victor Paleologus in him, who had recently been released on parole, namely on January 20, 2003. He had previously been convicted of a crime. In his turbulent criminal past, there was an episode when he similarly lured a woman named Kristin Johnson to his apartment. He invited her to a party where there were supposed to be many celebrities. When she arrived, the apartment was quiet and empty. Victor began to harass her, and when the woman resisted, he attacked her. The criminal used a rope, strangled the victim, and then wanted to tie her up to rape her. But Kristin Johnson gathered her strength, broke free, ran out of the apartment, and managed to ask the neighbors for help. Victor Paleologus used the same bait for his victims, a promise to hold a casting or an invitation to a party. This was his typical scheme. Near Hollywood, this approach worked flawlessly. Many girls came to Los Angeles in search of their dream of cinema, and criminals took advantage of this. The first time, Victor got off with a suspended sentence for attacking a girl. Then, in 1998, there was an attempted rape of Katie DeBona, where he introduced himself as Brian, a film producer. For this attack, he also received a very short term. In addition, there were good reasons to believe that Victor was embezzling funds from the company where he previously worked. Many other female victims whom he tried to rape were also identified. However, all statements to the police were dismissed for various reasons, since the victims had no evidence. In one case, Victor attacked his ex-girlfriend by breaking into her apartment. This was also an unsuccessful attempt at a crime, but the criminal took money and valuables from the apartment. However, even for this crime, he only received a suspended sentence. Later, an even more serious incident occurred. Victor lured a girl named Heather into a trap. Like his other victims, he persuaded her to dress in a manner that, apparently, excited him the most. Then he tried to tie the girl up and her. Heather miraculously managed to break free. She pushed the attacker away with the sharp heel of her shoe. Those seconds allowed her to run out of the apartment and hide in her own car. The girl filed a statement with the police against Victor. For this crime, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison, but on January 20, 2003, he was released on parole. This happened just 3 weeks before Kristin's disappearance. As it turned out, upon release, the criminal immediately returned to his old ways. At the time when the police began their search for him, Victor was already under arrest. This time he stole a BMW X5 in Beverly Hills and tried to sell the car with forged documents. During the arrest in the hijacking case, a wallet was found on him, which contained a whole bunch of stolen identity cards, credit cards, and other documents. Victor Paleologus completely fit the type of criminal in the case of Kristin's disappearance, and he also acted according to the same scheme. All the facts pointed to him. Therefore, the police decided to show a photo of the suspect to Susan, who managed to avoid an attack thanks to her husband. At the police station, the girl instantly chose Victor's photo among others, and then at a face-to-face confrontation, she also recognized him. Susan noted that she immediately identified Paleologus, although it was obvious that he was trying to change his appearance. The man slightly hunched over, stretched one hand in front of him, put the other behind his back, combed his hair differently, but the deception was exposed. Susan's husband, who tried to detain the criminal, also recognized him during an additional check. Unfortunately, the parking lot guard where the missing person's car was found could not identify the offender, as he only saw him for a split second, from a distance, in the dark, and did not see his face at all. Victor was behind bars at the time, but on the day of Kristin's disappearance, he was at large. During the interrogation, the suspect denied any involvement in Kristin's disappearance and claimed that he had not communicated with Susan, although all the evidence indicated the opposite. Victor refused to talk to detectives without a lawyer. He explained this by the fact that he had recently been released on parole and was afraid that they were trying to frame him. Therefore, the investigators focused on gathering evidence against him. Soon a new witness appeared, a realtor who had been working with Victor for the past few weeks and considered his behavior suspicious. Paleologus was looking through him for a house worth up to $700,000. They inspected several properties every day. This went on until a report came in about the disappearance of documents and keys from one of these houses. However, the realtor did not even suspect at the time that his client could be the thief. But now, seeing Victor's photo in the police chronicle, he understood everything. The witness also recognized the criminal. According to him, they last met the day before Kristin's disappearance. That day, Victor behaved strangely, he was somewhat nervous. In one of the houses they were inspecting, he went to the toilet and shouted from there, allegedly checking the soundproofing. The police suggested that in this way he could be looking for a place with good soundproofing to commit crimes. Law enforcement officers carefully examined each of the houses that the criminal visited. They paid special attention to the one that most interested Victor. As it turned out, this building was located in the same area where the signal from the missing person's phone was last recorded, which also aroused suspicion. The police were looking for traces, any evidence that could point to Kristin. There was a possibility that her body was in the house, but they found nothing. Meanwhile, searches were also conducted in Victor's apartment. On his computer, photographs of women were found in the criminal's favorite outfit, the same miniskirt, white blouse, stockings, and high-heeled shoes. At this stage, the investigation had been going on for 12 days, but the family of the missing girl still hoped that she would return home alive. And Victor continued to deny everything and was in no hurry to share information with the detectives. He only confirmed that he had seen Kristin, but then she left, and he did not meet her again. Victor Paleologus was born in 1962 in Pennsylvania into an ordinary family. He was the youngest of 5 brothers. Victor entered college, received a bachelor's degree, and then went to Los Angeles to study in graduate school. He had been married since 1993. Interestingly, there is reason to believe that in 1991, the criminal tried to poison his wife when she filed a statement against him. Victor's attempts to organize a restaurant business failed. Gradually, the image of a man embittered at the whole world, who had sunk to crime, emerged. Victor's fetish for beautiful women probably made him cross a dangerous line, and he began to attack them with the intention of. As for the evening when Kristin disappeared, the criminal, together with his lawyer, provided an alibi. Victor allegedly met with a friend in a restaurant, they had dinner together. This information was indeed confirmed, but the police understood that despite this, he had enough time to play out another drama with a new victim and kidnap her. On March 1st, a witness called the police. The man claimed that on February 15th, he saw the missing girl. She allegedly stopped near his house and asked about a mansion that looked like a castle. He himself did not know where it was located, but his wife, hearing the conversation, suggested the direction. This happened around 5:30 p.m. It became clear now for what purpose Kristin called the directory service at the number 411. The girl was trying to find her way to a house that resembled a castle. The police had a new lead. A house that looks like a castle. It was in a similar building that Victor checked the soundproofing. Everything pointed to him. While investigators were working with this information, a new event occurred. On March 3, 2003, a group of 4 teenagers was walking in the Hollywood Hills. They were enjoying the picturesque view of Los Angeles from a height. Suddenly one of them approached the edge and noticed some strange object about 100 meters below. The teenagers began to peer and at first thought it was a mannequin. The guys decided to go down, but they could not get to the mysterious object. However, they got close enough to understand that it was not a mannequin, but a human body. The young witnesses hesitated for a long time about what to do next, as they did not have mobile phones with them. In the end, they decided to go to the police. On the way, the teenagers met a woman who was walking her dogs and told her about the gruesome find. She approached the body to make sure what she heard was true. The victim's legs were tied and wrapped in blue fabric. She was wearing a gray hoodie. Her hands were tied behind her back. A hair tie remained on her right wrist. Below the waist, torn stockings were visible. The woman, frightened by what she saw, called the police. Soon the police and rescuers arrived at the scene, who made considerable efforts to retrieve the body from the hard-to-reach area in the Hollywood Hills. The criminal probably hoped that the body would never be found. Perhaps it would have happened if it weren't for the curious teenagers who accidentally wandered into this remote area. The forensic expert identified the body as the missing Kristin Johnson. She was found not far from the house that had so interested Victor during the tour with the realtor. The police informed Kristin's parents about the tragedy. They were devastated by the pain of loss. Numerous bruises and scratches were found on the body of the murdered girl, which indicated a desperate resistance. The condition of the body was poor. It had time to decompose significantly, being in the heat for many days, and one day it was raining at that. The face was especially disfigured due to multiple injuries, and also because the head was lowered. The girl had a torn ear, as well as a large bruise on her head and neck. These were the consequences of a traumatic brain injury and strangulation, which was considered the cause of death. But later, new horrific details were revealed. The detectives were convinced that the murder was committed by Victor Paleologus, but it was necessary to prove that he had no alibi at the time of Kristin's death. For this, the police met with his friend Joey, with whom Victor allegedly had dinner that evening. However, it turned out that this did not quite correspond to reality. Upon detailed questioning, it also turned out that they had agreed to meet much later than the time of Victor's meeting with Kristin. According to Joey, they accidentally met Victor the day before, on February 15th. He was late for the meeting, arriving around midnight, although they had agreed on a much earlier time. Victor had scratches on his face, which he explained as an accidental injury during the move. The police approximately reconstructed the sequence of events that preceded the disappearance of Kristin Johnson. According to the investigation, Victor picked up his victim in the shopping center, where he often looked for prey. Seeing a beautiful young girl, he decided to act. The man, as usual, introduced himself as a film industry worker and offered Kristin to audition for the role of a James Bond girl. He was very convincing in his persuasions. Acting according to his usual scheme, Victor showered the girl with compliments and assured her that she was perfect for this role. Given Kristin's ambitions and young age, she believed the offender and could not refuse. Victor made an appointment in one of the houses he had viewed with the realtor, explaining that the casting would take place there. Kristin, not suspecting the trap, prepared for the audition, dressing as the criminal had asked. She arrived at the place with a slight delay, as she got lost on the way and sought help from the directory service. Thus, the girl fell into a deadly trap from which she no longer got out. At the meeting, she became the object of harassment but put up a desperate resistance, scratching the attacker. There was nowhere to run, and the man turned out to be stronger, so Victor overpowered her, girl, and killed her to get rid of the witness. First, he hit her on the head and strangled the girl, and then threw the body into the Hollywood Hills. The most terrible thing is that the traumatic brain injury and strangulation did not cause instant death. Kristin only lost consciousness, and the criminal decided that she was dead. When the killer threw the body off the cliff, the girl fell from a considerable height and suffered even more injuries. That's when she regained consciousness. Kristin was slowly and excruciatingly dying in that place, not waiting for help. Only later did death finally release her from suffering. On May 12, 2003, the district attorney charged Victor Paleologus with kidnapping and first-degree murder. However, the defense was determined to defend the client's freedom, as there was a lack of direct evidence against him. The prosecution faced a difficult struggle, so forensic experts used all available weighty arguments. They questioned the time of death, referring to the insects found on the body. The prosecutors also stressed the striking similarity of this crime with Victor's previous attacks and victims. These cases were so identical that they simply had to be mentioned in court. Preparation for the trial dragged on, so Victor Paleologus appeared in court only in July 2006. The defense focused on the fact that the prosecution actually had no physical evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, no footage from surveillance cameras that would link Victor to the victim. This was explained by the fact that the body was found only 2 weeks after the disappearance, and during this time it had time to decompose significantly, which is why all the evidence was lost. However, when all the witnesses who accused Victor of harassment testified in court, the situation changed in favor of the prosecution. They unanimously told how skillful a manipulator the defendant was. He behaved so convincingly that even the most distrustful girls, like Kristin and Susan, initially believed him and agreed to go to the casting, not even suspecting what awaited them. It seemed that no one had any doubts that this was Victor's style and that he had killed Kristin. Therefore, the criminal resorted to a trick to avoid the death penalty. He decided to make a deal with the investigation and plead guilty to a less serious crime. Now the fate of this deal depended on the consent of the relatives of the deceased. At that time, the trial had been going on for 3 weeks and was barely moving forward. Its outcome remained unpredictable. After all the suffering they had endured, Kristin's family was ready to make concessions in order to bring the criminal to justice. However, on the day of the sentencing, the defendant submitted an 11-page petition to the judge asking to withdraw his guilty plea. Fortunately, it was no longer possible to cancel the deal. Victor Paleologus was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life imprisonment with the right to parole after 25 years. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.